Hello, my name is Claire Harrison. I'm the Managing Director of Harrison's, and welcome to our first webinar of 2026. And welcome to 2026. So exciting to get the year started, getting back into our routines, but really exciting is looking at all the changes in HR and workplace relations that we need to be ready for in 2026. So over the next 45 minutes or so, I'll be sharing the top HR and workplace relations trends and changes that Australian employers need to be prepared for or know about for 2026. So these insights have come after extensive research and analysis by the Harrison's team. As the title suggests, we'll be covering the most important developments in HR and changes that will impact your businesses over the next, not just this year, but few years. I'm excited to dive in, and I'm really trying hard to provide practical tips for you rather than just theory, but practical tips that you can take back to your workplaces that you need to action. We might save, you can put them in the chat if you want, if we get to them, but questions, we might save them to the end and we'll just see how much time we have, because I do have about 12 at least topics that we'll be working through. I'm saving the workplace relations changes until the end, and there's a few, 6 I think, subtopics underneath that one, so we'll have some time to work through that. So if anyone is having problems seeing me or hearing me, maybe just pop that into the chat so that we know, but if not, I am going to get started. As a disclaimer, Harrison's and myself are not lawyers, we're not a law firm, nor are we giving you any advice that is specific to your situation. So this is the disclaimer for today's presentation. For those that don't know about Harrison's, Harrison's is a HR consulting firm. We're based in Brisbane in Australia, predominantly serving Australian-based employers. And really, these are the 4 areas of business or services that we have. The first being consulting. So consulting is anything where an existing HR function or business needs additional capability or capacity. So that's across HR, workplace relations, and work health and safety. Next is a core service for us, which we call HR team, but explain as being our outsourced, insourced HR. That typically is for an SME business, normally anything from like 30 to 300, where they've identified the need for professional HR advice and support, but have decided to outsource that. So what we do is we do a full HR audit, we develop a plan, we do an engagement survey, we do a compliance check, and we allocate a HR manager to that client to deliver on that agreed plan. Next service is recruitment and onboarding, which I think stands for itself, but mainly we specialise in professional, managerial, executive type roles. We recently recruited CEO, heads of HR type roles, or anything across those areas. And My HR Experts is our newly revitalised online subscription membership site. It's only $99 per month. It gives you access to all of the previous versions of these webinars over the past few years, hundreds of them. Webinars, there's HR Bites, which are the shorter sessions, other video training sessions. We have hundreds of templates around everything to do with HR, and plus you have access to Harry, who is our AI online HR coach that's programmed with all of Harrison's information, Australian legislation, to be able to answer your questions. If you'd like to know anything more about those, please feel free to reach out to us. But let's get started. First topic. Okay, so the rise of generative AI, and sometimes I think, goodness, we're getting sick of hearing about AI, but it's not going away and it's forever changing. So as workplaces, employers, HR professionals, business leaders, we need to understand what it means for our businesses and our work. But that's not just about how we can use it in our work, it's also the governance and all of the requirements and regulations that go with that. So this trend is it's shifted from being a novelty, let's have a play with chat, to an everyday workplace tool. So it's moved to necessity. I can't live without AI. I love it, embrace it. However, I say that with caveats, which we will talk about, but 84% of Australians in office roles report using AI at work, 84%. 26% are now daily users, with nearly 1/3 of them saying AI saves them 4+ hours per week of work. I think mine would be at least double, triple that. And I have seen other, goals and stats to increase the AI significantly more than that. Workers overwhelmingly see AI as augmenting, not replacing jobs. So 93% believe AI will enhance their roles, not replace their roles. So technology confidence is high. 72% say digital tools have positively impacted their lives over the past decade. However, of interest, there is a generational divide, which probably is not surprising. Significant differences in AI confidence and skills. So Gen Zs say that they're 46% proficient. Gen Xs is 25%. I find that I take great offence to that. I think we should be higher. Gen Xs, let's get that up. And baby boomers only 18%. So that's something to consider with our workforces. But workplace preparedness, interesting, although the usage is fairly high, the workplace preparedness is lagging. So 72% of workers fear breaching data or regulatory rules when they're using AI, which is good that there's some level of concern. But what we don't want that to turn into is they won't use it because of the fear there. Only 35% have received any formal AI training, and 25% of workers are banned from using AI tools entirely, which creates a shadow risk around AI because they're banned, they will use tools that are uncontrolled to do their work, which creates a different risk altogether. So the workforce implication is there's massive capability gaps and rising anxiety about data breaches and misuse of AI. So really the action for employers and workplaces here is to run an AI usage audit specific to your business around how it's being used, when it's being used, by who it's being used. Also introduce an acceptable use policy to start setting safe and consistent standards. And most importantly, if you haven't already, invest in prompts. So the development of consistent prompts for your business so that there's a better and consistent outcome for how your employees are using AI to deliver your services internally or externally. And also, really importantly, training in the AI tools that your business is using for your employees. So that is about the rise of generative AI. The next topic follows on from that, which is about the regulation of AI. So there is definitely a trend in terms of global and local regulation. It's tightening. And it's really led by the EU AI Act, which came in, I would think, about 2 years now. So the way that we've seen this happen before is that other countries around the world, including Australia, will adopt something very similar to that. So if you haven't looked at that, then I suggest that you do. Australia has released the 8 AI principles. At the moment, they're voluntary, but we have been told there's mandatory guardrails for high-risk AI coming. So I think important to look at that EU AI Act, because what it does very well is basically the risk assessment around AI usage. And so if you do sit in one of those high risk organisations or work type, then you will really need to give thought in terms of one is how you're going to comply with the legislation when it comes out, but also just good business practice and protection for your organisation in terms of how you're dealing with that high-risk AI usage. So HR systems like our hiring tech, so our talent acquisition systems, our HRISs, they need to be treated as high risk. They require documentation and oversight in terms of how we're using AI within those systems, because most of those systems are now offering or embedding AI in their usage. So as an organisation, you need to build your own AI governance framework, and I would suggest that that's aligned to that EU risk model. Next topic, we're on a tech theme here, is cybersecurity at work. So cyber threats are escalating and human errors are the main cause of those cyber issues. So cybersecurity is now one of the fastest growing risks for Australian workplaces, with data breaches continuing to climb year on year. And as I said, human error remains the number one cause of those breaches. That could be, as you know, sometimes we all do inadvertently, but clicking a malicious link, sending data to the wrong person, which is so easy when we've got this, predictive text comes up on our phones or on our laptops or computers, weak passwords, or falling for the social engineering of people, that copycat look that's not actually the person you thought it was. So the Cybersecurity Act 2024 for Australia creates new obligations for employers. The Notifiable Data Breaches Scheme requires companies to inform both individuals and the Office of the Australian Information Commission, OAIC, when breaches are likely to cause serious harm. So increased commissioner transparency means HR teams are now more accountable for employee privacy, and there's a whole other act around privacy being tightened up as well, for employee privacy, data handling, and ensuring the workforce is cyber aware. So small and medium-sized businesses remain the prime targets due to their low maturity and their resourcing to defend, combat, identify, but that makes prevention and the training essential. So the implications for HR and workplace include the boundary between personal and workplace digital environment being blurred, especially with hybrid work and also BYOD practices. So I know many of our clients that the employees are using their personal mobile phones for work purposes, and we have this blending of having, the work information on their phone plus their personal socials or whatever they may be, and the risk that brings for businesses. HR manages vast amounts of confidential data, making it a high value attack point when we look at all the private data that we're working with. Cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue, it's a whole of business capability issue. Regulators and clients increasingly expect demonstrable security behaviours, training, and incident readiness. So organisations need to strengthen employee training and awareness, and they need to implement strong technical controls. It's no longer optional when it comes to cybersecurity issues prevention. It's a business critical capability that needs to be developed. Moving on, that's our tech set. Now we're going to talk about skills. So the trend that we're talking about here is the move from skills are overtaking degrees as the basis for hiring and promotion. So our statistic in this area is that 94% of organisations say that skill-based hires outperform degree-based hires. So the workforce implication is that traditional qualifications no longer reflect what a role actually requires. So the action for organisations is to create skills inventories and to map current capability to future needs, especially when you're doing your workforce resource planning processes every year. Leading on from that, in terms of a way to help solve that issue or to, make the most of the opportunity actually that exists there, is another trend, which is about workers are turning to fast, targeted micro credentials to stay employable. So I don't know, hopefully you've all come across National Micro Cred Seeker. Search up the website. Enrolments are growing as stackable qualifications expand within their platform. Also, there's many others that you would have come across. I know another one, I was in the US at the end of last year for an AI conference, and one of the products I came across over there is called Data Camp. Maybe some of you have already come across it, but it is, I think, it's great for education around AI and some other other tech products, but really good for tech people like data engineers, tech engineers. So Data Camp, really good for IT. And also ARI, the Australian Human Resources Institute, has a raft of HR micro-credentialing available for HR professionals. So the workforce implication here is employees expect flexible modular learning instead of sign me up for a degree or a master's or an MBA. So we need to support the priority micro-credentials in those high priority areas like AI literacy, leadership skills, we're going to talk about a little bit later, and those data skills. So micro-credentialing is something you should get onto if you're not already. Okay, remote and hybrid work. Again, I think like AI, it's something we've been talking about for a long time, but especially so in the last few years. So it's now also become standard. It's no longer experimental. So hybrid and flexible work are no longer new. They've become the default operating model for many Australian organisations and global organisations. Current patterns for full-time employees in 2025. So those that were working 3 days in the office, there were 30% of those. No minimum, but encouraged to work in the office, 28%. 2 days in the office, 16%. So where we do see hybrid practices, I see it most often around that 3 days in the office, but obviously there's not all organisations can do that. So the number of employers requiring 3 to 5 days on site is dropping slightly. So it's gone 44% in 2025 versus 2 years before that was 48%. So it's only changed by 4. So that's basically nearly half that are saying that 3 to 5 days on site. There are about 28% of employees that still cannot work from home at all, but 2/3 of organisations provide alternative flexible arrangements for those roles. So workforce implications, the new right to disconnect laws, change communication and after hours expectations is another consideration in this area. So really for employers, we need to get really clear on the rules for availability and response times to comply with right to disconnect, flexible working arrangements requests, and also to protect wellbeing. But I think important is the documenting, is having clear guidelines around how your organisation handles remote and hybrid work. Similar but different is gig work. As we know, it continues to grow, especially in specialist and on-demand roles. The professional roles, we see sites like Upwork and many other gig work, people having all their side hustles. So this continues to grow, but, in the past unregulated, but now increasingly, and again, globally becoming more regulated. So from Feb 2025 last year, employee-like workers can lodge unfair deactivation claims with Fair Work. So the implication is that businesses now face new compliance duties with gig and contractor relationships. So what you need to do is to review all contractor gig engagements that exist within your organisation for fair rates, classifications, and the deactivation process that you're currently using. Psychosocial risk. So again, not new. The code came out a few years ago, but psychosocial hazards remain a top work health and safety, I would say HR, workplace, organisational concerns with rising claims. So job demands, conflict, remote work were the three biggest contributors to increased complaints in this area. Change fatigue and rising workloads are impacting health and culture of organisations. So as organisations, we need to create the system around this, just like we do with anything else across work health and safety. We need to conduct regular psychosocial risk assessments, and we need to act on hotspots within our organisations. We need to be proactive on that. We can't just wait for something to happen before we jump on it. So we need a proactive plan around risk assessment and planning for that. Aging workforce. So we have a trend of older workers that now make up almost 1 in 5 employees with rising retirement ages. So 25% of Australians over 50 experience age discrimination. So a quarter of workers over 50 experience age discrimination. 1 in 4. 40% of employers won't hire over 65s. So the workforce implication of this is that obviously we risk losing critical knowledge and longer replacement times. Why would we not hire and hold on to these people? So we need to introduce those flexible retirement pathways to hold on to those people, to value their knowledge. We could do that by implementing formal mentoring programs to capture that expertise. I think we're also in a leadership skills crisis, and the crisis for a middle manager. Middle managers are overwhelmed by hybrid work, compliance, AI rollout, wellbeing demands on top of their BAU. There is a lot that a middle manager leader is responsible for. We have really high expectations of them, and unfortunately, only 28% of employers invest in leadership capability. So leadership capability is a core risk factor for culture, safety, and performance. When we think about the impact that these middle managers, leaders have on your organisation, when we talk about retention of your employees, productivity, performance, delivery on operations, they are key roles within our organisations, yet we all know we promote this great practitioner, technical person into a leader role and just expect them to be a fabulous leader. And then, then we jump on them when that's not happening and start performance managing them, exit them, demote them, whatever that might be, or wait for some burnout claim or get really critical that they don't know how to be a good leader. So we can't expect that. We're just asking for trouble in terms of that individual, but also for our organisation. So we need to provide practical, hands-on leadership training and reduce the admin and load on those leaders so that they can lead and not be caught up doing other, work tasks that could sit with someone else in an admin role, or get rid of it through AI or technology or streamlining, and put them in the role that we hired them for, which is to be a leader, and develop them in that capacity. Gender equity, again, not a new issue, but still not moving quick enough. So the 2025 Gender Equity Insights Report, which is called The Power of Balance, if you want to look it up, it's between the Curtin, it was conducted by the Curtin Economic Centre and the Workplace Gender Equality Agency, WGEA, shows many organisations taking action to do better in this area. like setting goals for pay equity, doing a regular gender pay gap analysis, making leadership roles more flexible, and they've seen fewer women resigning, more women moving into management, lower staff turnover, and better shareholder value, which might tick the box that many are looking for. However, across the economy, only 27% of organisations reach gender balance. Gender balance is defined as at least 40% women and 40% men. So only 27% of organisations achieving that gender balance. Yes, and we understand in certain sectors that's difficult, but only 27% of organisations. Australia has significantly improved its global ranking for gender equality, so reaching 13th place in 2025, its highest ever, and that's according to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report, if you want to have a look at that. This rise for us is attributed to progress in educational attainment, political empowerment and economic participation, though the country still faces challenges such as our gender pay gap. So Australia's gender pay gap for full-time workers is still $242.30 per week, which translates to 11.5% difference. This means women on average earn 11.5% less than the men who are doing the same work. A more comprehensive measure, the total remuneration gender pay gap for private sector employees is higher at 21.8%. So still much area for improvement in Australia. The leadership gap, women are underrepresented in key leadership positions, holding only 19.4% of CEO roles, only 32% of key management positions, only 33% of board roles, and only 18% of board chair roles, despite making up about half of the total workforce. So there's growing public pressure and scrutiny around gender pay gaps, with more companies being required to report on their pay data. So hopefully most of you are aware about the WGEA reporting. So there's new employer obligations for setting gender equality targets during the current financial year, 25-26, reporting period April to May 2026. So if you don't know about that, then you should definitely look further, or we're happy to help you with that. So what to do? You need to conduct a thorough pay audit to identify any pay disparities between genders in similar roles. You need to take action to fix any pay parity issues that are uncovered, ensuring equal pay for equal work. Develop and publish a clear action plan with specific targets for improving gender equity in pay and representation for your organisation. Okay, and the last topic, but like I said, I've got about 6 subtopics of this. Some I'm going to skip quickly over. So wage and employment laws, unless we're under a rock, we've all noticed that they're tightening, closing loopholes, including, wage theft, improper contractor classifications. So let's just go through some of them that happened last year and that are going into this year. So from January last year, we saw the criminalisation of wage theft, which should be a great incentive to really look at how you're paying people and avoid a criminal offence. 2 is right to disconnect. So we haven't really seen any cases come through in this area yet, but they were already in effect coming into 2025, but they came into effect for small businesses in August 2025. So an increasing focus, though, is around the unreasonable for requesting overtime, which is not just about right to disconnect, it's also when we talk about that, additional reasonable hours, that is starting to come into question. So that will be something to watch in terms of that reasonable versus unreasonable. 3 is casuals. So we continue to have the tightening up of laws to protect casuals. So what we did see last year was that employee choice pathway to permanency. 4, further limits on rolling fixed-term contracts, so closing the loopholes more around this area, so fixed-term contracts. 5, I'm going to talk a little bit more about than the others. So 5 was the case that was released at the end of last year of the Fair Work case against Woolworths and Coles cases. It was released, which was about salary arrangements, which has major implications for all employers, not just retail. So key findings. So Justice Perham ruled that annualised salary arrangements could not absorb award entitlements over an annual period. So we all know, and we're probably in many organisations that talk about an annual salary which smooths over a 12-month period, but what he's saying is that cannot happen. Employers must ensure that payments in each pay period fully satisfy award entitlements for that period, whether that's a week or a fortnight, most often. Set-off arrangements, which you've probably got in your contracts, are only permissible within individual pay periods, not across multiple pay periods. So really important points, changes, and a different interpretation than probably what all of us have been. So the implications for employers using annualised salary, offset type arrangements should review their practices to ensure compliance with the Act and the relevant awards. Really important to look at your relevant awards because some have annualised salary clauses, some have other provisions in them. So it needs to be specific to the awards that cover you. And I'll just say it because we get the question all the time. If you are paying someone $100,000, but the award says you only need to pay them $50,000, that does not mean that they're not covered by the award and that you don't need to comply with that award. They are still entitled to things like annual leave loading, overtime, whatever else. So please don't think that because you pay people well above award that they're not award covered. Top-up payments may be required in each pay period to avoid those underpayments. So the balancing out within pay periods, and really you need to keep great records, time and attendance, payroll records, and considering overtime and breaks, you need to be tracking that stuff. If you haven't, we've experienced many back pay claims that we need to provide all of that evidence. If you don't have it, it doesn't put you in a good position. So options for you to consider, if you're not already, is individual flexibility arrangements, IFAs, the guarantee of annual earnings for people above the high income threshold. If they're still award covered, they need to be done, both of those in a certain way and annually. Extension of the pay period. If you've got a weekly cycle, maybe you move to a fortnightly cycle to allow for some of that balancing out. And importantly, strict award compliance. So you need to get onto understanding your awards. So that, I thought I would just talk about that. I'm sure we've heard about that and probably over it, but that came out at the end of last year. That will probably be appealed, but we're probably looking at 2 years before that happens and we get a finding from that. So we need to be compliant with that, with those cases. 6, under these workplace laws. So major changes are coming to Australia's Children's Services Award for those that are in that sector. That's from the 1st of March. It is moving to a simplified 8-level classification structure and significant pay rate increases ranging from 9.4% to 27.8%. If you're in that sector, you need to be all over that and acting on that now because you've only got a month to be compliant. Also, I know some of you on the call are on the SHADS Award. So the SHADS Award is also under review, specifically their classification structure. This has been a process ongoing throughout 2025. They've got further submissions currently open that close on the 20th of February. And after that, the expert panel, hopefully you will soon make a final decision around that. So look out for that if that's your award. And finally, probably already across it, but payday superannuation. So from 1 July 2026, employers must pay superannuation contributions at the same time as wages within 7 days. And that's moving away from current quarterly payments. So critical to get your house in order now if you haven't already. So key actions: conduct thorough payroll and award audits to identify any underpayments or areas of risk or improper classifications for your organisation. Carefully review how you classify casual, gig workers, contractors to ensure compliance. Update all your employment contracts, IFAs, guarantee of annual earnings with the new stricter regulations, with consideration, like I said, to award compliance and those new annualised salary arrangements. So that's a lot under the tightening of workplace laws. So, getting ahead of these changes will, of course, help you avoid costly penalties, fines. We've got the criminalisation and, more importantly, or just as importantly, is the reputational damage of your organisation, either to individuals or more broadly on the cover of the paper. Not that we have that on the cover of social media. So in summary, this is what we've covered: the rise of AI, the regulation of AI, cybersecurity at work, focus on skills, micro-credentialing, remote and hybrid work, gig work regulated, psychosocial risks, ageing workforce, leadership skills crisis, gender equity, and tightening workplace laws. So Harrison's would love to help you with any of these areas that you might be looking for some advice, assistance or support on. So this is just a list of some of the work that we could help you with. Award and pay audits, we regularly do several every week. Review of employment contracts, whether that's for employees or for contractors. Leadership skills, training, programs, coaching customised to suit your organisation and your needs. We conduct market rem reviews or that internal pay parity work we could be doing. Your gender equity reporting, HR policies reviews or packs of policies, psychosocial hazards risk assessments and training in that area, mental health first aid training if that's what you're looking for, or book a HR planning session with me, and I'd love to talk about how all of these issues are impacting on your organisation. Please feel free to reach out to me either through these contact points or on LinkedIn, whatever it might be, and I'm happy to talk you through any of the topics that we discussed. I'm Claire Harrison. Thank you very much for listening today.